Alrighty. The fingers of the backstreets make up a set of syndicates rivaling the power of wings within the city. Short of their infighting and constant territory strifes, they could have likely dominated over the city themselves. That said, each finger follows a unique creed and belief system relevant to their assigned digits. The thumb favors authority, class, and respect over all else. They have a hard-on for rank and properly addressing your seniors. In this specific case, the thumb's reverence in such hierarchical systems is so extreme that they can and will study other systems of hierarchy to compare their own before communicating, in order to avoid speaking out of line. Often the punishment for such is the taking of your tongue or the dismemberment of any other such body parts. Anyhow, make no mistake, today's video is about the thumb, the Sicilian mafioso by any other name, ripped and directly imported into Project Moon City with many of the bells and whistles. They are by far my favorite syndicates, and it is rather sad that it has taken all the way up until now to get more IDs from them. Let's for once start with that logo. It's a hand gripping a rifle, styled in such a way that the thumb sits atop of it all. As such, the organization paints themselves as the strongest finger, with plenty of reason to do so. Everyone is seen as under the thumb, suppressed and oppressed by its authority. With the aforementioned hard-on for hierarchy and rank, this makes plenty of sense. As compared to prescripts or arts, else even camaraderie or the human experience, everyone in the city knows what it means to be bound by class. Their logo is fantastic in showing off all of their values in one go, and of course showcase the reasons they're feared, including their access to firearms. Now, on the subject of family for a moment, like any good Italian mafioso, the thumb acts as a family, with each subsidiary and member syndicate taking part as a connected entity. The leading set of them are referred to the Sette Famiglie. In plain old English and not butchered Italian, the 7 families. They hold a vast majority of the sway within the organization, with many of the more prominent members we see hailing from such. While being a part of one of these families doesn't immediately put you above everyone else, it does carry with it a level of prestige that other positions, high as you may get, will still not quite offer. Other families and subsidiaries include the Stray Dogs, Kurokumo Clan, Night Owls, Ruminous Cartel, and Ramio family, all of which we get brief mentions in Runa and beyond. Functionally though, they're all part of the thumb's umbrella. Anyhow, ranked number 1 out of the syndicates you would never want to be involved with, how can you identify a member of the thumb before you accidentally go about disrespecting them and costing you your tongue, arm, organs, life, or the lives of your entire family? Well, usually this is quite simple, as they love flaunting their own authority around. They ought to dress the part, no? In this specific case, they don black inner shirts and suits alongside a crimson red coat. Said coat is held together over the shoulders with a golden pin, if not worn outright. On top of that, a good chunk of them enjoy wearing hats, notably among the more rank and file. As you get higher in rank though, there's plenty of leeway to accessories though. Capos and above enjoy having additional ornamentations or modifications to their uniforms. If you see someone dressed as the classic Italian mafioso, it is in your best interest to keep quiet unless spoken to, and if nothing else, give them a fairly wide berth. Now, if you're some wealthy wing board member or a higher grade fixer, there's significantly less issue though, due to how absolute their treatment of rank is. Speaking of all these bloody ranks though, the organization must have plenty of their own, right? Only makes sense as they're comparing hierarchy both inwards and outwards. Starting with the basics, the lowest of the low within the organization, the soldatos. These soldiers, so to speak, are the equivalent in rank to the common fixer, no one all too special. They are armed with a rifle and bayonets, wear the classic thumb uniform, but are otherwise at the bottom of the barrel. It's here that you can see the thumb's creed isn't fully drilled in yet, as some of them can and still will act out of line and get punished for it. Regardless, within the rank, it is sectioned off into 4 more sub-ranks. In this case, Primo, Secondo, Terzo, and Quarto, these ranks going in that order. We are privy to the acts of a few of these in PM Works, notably an unfortunate pair of them in Canto 8, and a Sinner Identity in Sinclair, that of which sits as a Seconda. Capos are next, and right away they're a scary bunch, being treated as the equivalent to a grade 1 fixer. This is a pretty sharp increase in capability, rather in relative threat level, that's jumping straight to a lot of fellas we see attracted by Star of the City level contracts. Anyhow, Capos are given a lot more leniency and liberties in how they act. After all, they've made it quite high in the organization. Short of the next rank's orders, they are free to act as they please. This is where many of them have uniform alterations and fighting styles beyond the rifle and bayonet combats seen with the soldatos. Within this rank, like the previous, are 4 more ranks, likely equivalent to the prior. Specifically, we are privy to a few capos, those being Isabel, Dennis, Boris, Catriel, and Lei Heng. The last being a capo free, even. In terms of Sinner IDs, we've got Muso specifically, mirroring Lei Heng. Past capo, we've got Soto capo, the underboss, so to speak. These are second only to the Godfather themselves, the Capo de Capi. Essentially, they're district managers and given large swaths of territory to look over on behalf of the organization. They get to muster and hold power over the various families under their control, and are the equivalent of board members in a wing. We're privy to 2 of them, Old Man Kalo from Ruina, and Nurse Father Valentina, though she was there for like 3 days. Consigliere is next, and there's something of a new mention. We don't have all too much on them, however, we can place a few real-life hints together, alongside their actions and wording within the PM universe, to get a somewhat clear image of who they are. Within the Sicilian Mafia, a consigliere is a high-ranking advisor or representative of the Godfather themselves. In the sense that the consigliere is mentioned to have been coming from Central, it can be likened that the consigliere represents the authority of the Capo di Capi, the Godfather of the FUM. Seeing as Valentina gets shot down quite hard by one upon meeting them, it is likely that she had made some appeal to return her status directly from the Godfather, only to get brutally reminded of her place within the organization. We don't have any consiglieres, so to speak, and I have my doubts we'll ever really get one, considering they are pretty much second only to the Godfather in representing their will. Then comes the Capo di Capi, the Godfather, for lack of a better way of putting it. It is the highest authority within the FUM. Aside from knowing of their existence and their will being absolutes, we know next to nothing about them. With the ranks out of the way, let's talk brief on the way these guys execute upon their authority. As the more classic style syndicates, they more or less patrol around and let the families do the work for them, as seen with the Kurokumo clan. There's protection, racketing, extortion, territory strifes, all the usual works. The families under the FUM do things rather loud and proud, flaunting their power as they see fit to get their way. Compared to the cult-like following of the prescripts from the Index or the bro culture of the middle, this is the most systematic, I suppose. That said, for the main Sete family, they work with guns, specifically rifle and bayonet combat. They utilize every element of a rifle to crush and otherwise brutalize their foes, falling back on firing bullets only as a last resort. The butt of a rifle is a fantastic club, and fixing a bayonet can make for a rather good improvised spear. We get much of their capability through their combat pages in Ruina, wherein we see their whole style on display. Courtesy of Fox's Hollow, here's those broken down real quick. Class and Respect, their Light Restore, a melee/page that functions as a better version of their subsidiaries, the Kurokumos. Cleanup. This one is less combat and more their approach to matters as a whole. Reload, a cheap page that generates ammunition for them and draws. If we take it rather literally, they're combat reloading, which is quite cool. This works fantastically with their passives that lets them generate ammunition on hits. Going beyond there, the fellas are essentially judging that a few hits to down a fella aren't enough. Time to load some rounds in case and escalates. Speaking of ammo real quick, the FUM utilizes quite a bit of specialized rounds. The ones that don't have a discrete page and are generated through the use of others are Armor Piercing, that sap card power, Frost, that inflicts paralysis and disarm, and finally Flame, that inflicts burn. These effects also apply when discarded, adding effects to all FUM ranged pages. Moving along though, bayonet combats, a more expensive version of reload in practice. I suppose at the extent of fixing bayonets, it means that the target is slowly increasing in threat and becoming more and more worthy of bullets. In having a bayonet, rather than swinging the rifle butt alone as a club, they are now more capable of technical combats as shown off by the leading block die and improved offensive die following along. Suppressing shots. At this point, we've escalated to the point where shooting is appropriate. It utilizes ammo in hand from the previous few cards to improve its offensive capabilities. Essentially though, this is more of an emergency measure, used to suppress a foe in a pinch. Not the most measured approach to burning ammunition, definitely not the most effective combat page either. Shock rounds, on the other hand, are a properly measured version of appropriate force. It's more expensive at 2 lights and consuming up to 2 other pages to enhance its effects. The cooler part here is that the rifle is converting the loaded ammunition into shock rounds specifically. Less shock as in electricity though, and judging by the looks of it, shock by trauma, hence the page's art. Focus Fire is your premium mag dump on the other hand. Unload everything upon the enemy kinda combat page. Appropriately, it rolls damn high and is needlessly disgusting as this offsets a lot of ranged page weaknesses. But for the Fum Soldato, it's gonna be a rather expensive order to fulfill. The bullet fees here alone are a lot of screaming, since you can use up to 4 ammo on this page. And well, there's a cunt on the page using a fucking Tommy gun. The above is the basis for the Soldato's approach to combat. In summary, start with beating them up, the good old-fashioned way. If they're still resisting, load a few rounds in case. If that's still not enough of a deterrent, get a little more technical with your approach first, get some use out of your bayonets, and spear them to death. Only then, if the need arises to escalate, do you pull the trigger and start unloading. Suppress the enemy, shock them away with some blunt trauma, and in something of a full escalation or last resort, mag dump them. Honestly, seems to paint a very vivid picture of how the Fum goes about things in combat, at least how the usual Soldatos of the Sete family approach things. This lines up pretty much perfectly with Boris's key page wherein he states that they use specialized ammo for the job, but it ain't cheap. If you can beat them down with your rifle butts or stab them full of holes with their bayonets, save the ammo. Boris, though, we'll get to how the more unique members fight as we go along. Speaking of, let's go ahead and cover all the named and notable members of the Fum, and if relevant, how they choose to fight in comparison with the standard procedure above. Some of them are needlessly cool in that regard. Let's start with the Ruiner crew before a jaunt into Distortion Detective, and finally the jank that is the Limbus fellas. Say hello to our first capo, Dennis. Man looks like an antisocial mess, but has a bloody sharp tongue. Man is up to speed on protocol and punishments. His key page details the punishment of trying to disrupt the hierarchy, specifically the purge. If you go against the grain, you'll get purged. No ifs or buts. This is your entire organization too. Doesn't matter how severe your infraction, questioning the Fum's core tenets is tantamount to blasphemy that must be rooted out at all costs. They showed insolence. That's the most important factor. The lesson will be marked by blood, a demonstration for others to not break the rule again. He goes on to point this out as the singular most important rule, and ruminates that some people can't even show the most basic of decencies in doing such. As for his fate, we initially see him during the Fum's gathering of families, where he is quick to remind of and deal out punishments. Following that, he has choice words for Yan, before the Fum higher-ups all head to the library. Therein, he ends up cutting off Catriel's tongue, before facing off the library proper. Ultimately, he gets booked. In terms of fighting style, he's not too much different from the average Soldato of the Sete family, but at least has the gun-wielding capo and above exclusive page of summary judgments. The art begets its effects, which is rather funny, as this is a melee page but can use ammunition. It's very weird in that sense, since each ammo would otherwise provide special effects. That said, it's a lead evade for getting rid of pesky evades alongside some stagger recovery, but is otherwise rather funky to make use of due to being timed in the melee phase. It is fantastic to have in terms of lore though, since only capos and above are allowed to just set judgment instantly, like the art implies. Next we have Boris. Fella's the most direct, raw muscle fellow we see in the Fum's ranks. Essentially the might is right sort, who makes use of steel knuckles to get his way. He's a respected member of the Fum, and is no nonsense about matters, being particularly combative as needs must. This page regards their fighting style and bullets, those of which we have described thus far. Now his combat style is wholly distinct from the rest of the gun-wielding Fum members, in pretty much being all fisticuffs. He comes with 3 combat pages that fully inform his approach to combat without a gun. First off, man has got some serious grit, allowing him to shrug off quite a lot of damage. Aside from that, he has a shocking amount of defensive capabilities. Ferrous Guard. Essentially an iron-laden guard is a rather insane 2 lead block die, followed by a slash dice. Essentially, the man is tanking out hits before slapping back with impunity. It's good value in block-focused decks and keeps him alive far longer than you'd expect. From there is Steel Knuckles. This is one of my favorite cards in Ruiner. It's 2 blunt slaps and a counter die that draws you a page. It's one of the cheapest pages that has a counter and draws cards for you. But regardless, this is premium blunt, and more or less can be summarized as such. He beats people up with his bare hands, and when you come at him, we'll continue to beat you up with a slash counter. The joke Foxes makes here is that the man probably carries a switchblade. I'd argue that he stopped going for straights and started going for hooks. It's a shockingly good card for solos, being as economic as it is while offering that counter die. Anyhow, this is the Might Makes Right card, and it shows it off with flying colors. That said, we've got Discipline then. It wouldn't be a fun character if he didn't mete out punishment too. In this case, it's an expensive 4 light to beat the living shit out of everyone else. It's a very honest page, as it does exactly what it says on the card. It evens the playing field, removes all power gain or loss effects, and beats the living shit out of someone. Regardless, it's 2 upfront block die, followed by an absolute pummeling that reuses. We can turn even Xiao honest with this thing, so Foxes says. Anyhow, without glazing Boris and his steel knuckles, he goes through most of what Dennis does, minus the remarks on punishment, and instead acting as an eye to Kalo. He ultimately gets booked in the library. Following up, we've got Catriel. She's another caper that offers advice to Kalo, and plenty of information otherwise. She's a more tame advisor compared to Boris. The key page details the FUM's chain of command and the expectation of following orders. If you step out of line, you get punished. You must follow the order even if you are only outranked by a single position. Gotta follow the pecking order unless someone higher up than you takes your side. Now, an odd affair that she mentions, and we eventually get to see put into practice, is the devolving of power, wherein a higher ranked individual can temporarily bestow their authority upon an individual and allow them to speak with that level of authority. It is done mainly for experts or substituting in meeting. Regardless, it is a rare affair to invoke. As for Catriel herself, she fights more like a typical FUM Soldato would, closer mirroring Dennis, but with less ammo on hand. Is increased first ranged die power, making it seem like she opens with gunfire compared to the others. Otherwise, places a higher focus on precision firepower, so to speak, compared to Dennis's unloading. Catriel is seen to be a fantastic eyed up until she runs into Angela, wherein she messes up the chain of command and speaks out of turn. Allegedly, a ruling figure of a Star of the City rated phenomena outclasses even an underboss, meaning Angela wields close to the same level of respect as the Godfather. Anyhow, due to this, Catriel's tongue gets cut off and shuts up from then on, before getting booked like the rest. As a funny note, only the highest ranking member of each stage in the reception actually speaks. Catriel, in being paired with Kalo and having her tongue cut off, just doesn't speak. Next is, of course, the Soto Capo Kalo, disgruntled old man with a scar. He is one of the highest ranking members of the FUM and presides over the capture of El Corp's nest. He is the one that coordinates the families and even the fellow that orders the purge of the Night Owls. His key page offers much of what we know of rank and respect when turned outwards, notably the categories to which different folks of the city are thrown into, as well as how FUM members ought to act around their betters. Know that class is earned, not given for free. It is only right to give it the respect it deserves. Kalo fights more as a leader of an organization, commanding officer sort, if you will. He hands out protection to his allies under the guise of the boss's orders, while also being an insanely competent combatant with boosted offense die power through threefold tenacity, offering him boosts for every third die, or for all die after the fourth turn. Note that this bonus does reset, so he does need a few turns to fully rev up. That old age is probably kicking in. Aside from that, he fights much like Catriel and Dennis do, with hybrid ranged and melee options. Now, the combat page worth talking about is Le Regol, the rules, so to speak. This is his stern way of reinforcing punishments. Everyone boosts their damage up next turn after being given this reminder of authority. It clashes damn high and even offers a counter. As a leader on the field, you can ask for few better than Kalo. In the end, the fella is the linchpin of the FUM's operations during Ruina, delegating families and overseeing L Corp operations until push comes to shove and he takes himself and the leading cast over to the library, where unfortunately he ultimately gets booked. In regards to Distortion Detective, we've got Isabel, a rather sly capo of the FUM that cuts a deal with Moses. This is one of the rare occasions we see devolvements put into practice, as she would have otherwise considered Vesper to have been the party's leader. She gets the DD crew to find out what has become of their ammo supply in the area, ultimately putting them face to face with the Marksman of the Mist. Herein, they run into Edgar, the Grade 1's Y Fixer, scary bloke, and the DD crew go back on their deal with the FUM, especially as Edgar would likely slime them out for non-compliance and otherwise make their lives hell as fixers. Plus, they return with Edgar in tow, and Isabel and her 20 soldatos are pasted by the crew with Edgar alongside. Very unceremoniously, might I add. Moving along now to Limbus Company's representatives of the FUM. We've got 3 of them, so to speak. First off, we've got Lei Heng, one of the 10 Blades of the East, the Tianshui Star, and a Capo 3 of the FUM. He's the bastard uncle type that is a capable asshole. He's one of the stronger antagonists that the party runs across and does not fight anywhere near the typical FUM member. Instead, he wields a gun propulsion blade and uses bullets to speed up his slashes, and otherwise add effects through Tiger Mark rounds. As a Capo of the East, it seems this Dow propulsion blade affair isn't that outlandish for their higher ranking members, though personally I am not quite as big a fan. It seems that the East prefers their one-man aura farmer, where instead of fighting quite as much like a proper mafia or organization would, the lower ranks are there strictly as supports. This can be seen with the soldatos only interfering to provide the man more bullets. Rather, it seems like their main purpose, at least with Lei Heng's bunch, are to provide him more bullets, rather than to provide more direct support in combat. All that said, the Savage Tiger Slayer's flurry of blades is rather far away from the fun stuff above. Not that we haven't seen Capo's deviates from the norm before. You can watch the Pinky video for the rest on this fella, but ultimately he gets slimed out after a long night of relentless back and forth. Next, we're looking at Lucio. He is the most interesting apprentice of the House of Spiders, at least if you read over his lore. He's abused heavily by Valencina, but works diligently to become a textbook of the Palamitan style on her behalf. He's a stray abused dog that would see he gets his eventual revenge and freedom by killing Valencina. Unfortunately for the fella, he gets impaled through the heart by Gregor before his ambitions come to fruition. Not that he stood much of a chance running into the LCB. That said, Lucio is a rather complex character, full of contradictions, the sort that would plague many a domestic abuse case. He utilizes a pair of swords, focused on dueling and hunting down enemies through said Palamitan style. As a member of the FUM though, he doesn't really demonstrate all too much of their attitude. Rather, he was about to commit the cardinal sin of disrupting the hierarchy if he went ahead with his plan of killing his nurse father. His unwavering loyalty, in spite of this, is probably the most he holds of the Finger's creed at least. As for the nurse father Valencina, she's a mess. Like, past the domestic abuse, she was once a hero of La Famiglia, blah 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 blah. She was once a hero of the La Famiglia Bognatelli, on the up and up, becoming a Sottocapo, reaching the same ranking as Kalo functionally. Heck, she was a Smokewall hero accordingly, but some such event caused her downfall and eventual installment into the House of Spiders, the trash bin of the Fingers, waiting for incineration. Now, her claim to fame was the family's Palamitan style, alongside her relic, the Eye of Odin. She is disgustingly strong, even past her prime, the relic and the fighting style having madhouse synergy with one another. The Palamitan style is one that ramps up over time and speeds forward. It is a dual weapon style that resembles an embellished Florentine. The bullets are acceleration rounds, adding onto this speed and further boosting her terrifying velocity, letting her stay toe-to-toe with the Red Gaze. The relic then plays a rather interesting role in functionally being a predictive computer. Thus, the two interplay with one another, and as she gets faster, she gets closer to the future she foresaw. Hence the line, "The more we clash, the hotter my sword will become," and accelerate to bring us to the future I foresaw. With both in hand, he could rise to the rank of Sottocapo at the behest of La Famiglia Bognatelli, only to lose it in 3 days, having the family withdraw their love from her. Disgraced and thrown into the trash bin of spiders, she would train up Roshu. She had paused her abusive ways for a while when raising the kid, until a meeting with the FUM consigliere drove her back into her old ways. After Roshu's escape, the next we see of her is fighting off Virgilius to a tie, and later on getting absolutely destroyed by the Roach Emperor, cutting her life short. We will likely get more details on her past with the coming Rodya, hence the making of this video in the lead up. My guess has to do with Arya in the lab. Moving along, we've got 2 Sinner IDs in the form of Sinclair and Merceau. Sinclair is a Soldato Secondo. We get plenty of insight into the mentality of the average FUM foot soldier, their quietly obedience, and write a letter of appreciation for their promotion as their uptie story. It's all very kiss-ass and reveals the existence of some pretty funny concepts. For one, the FUM has an introductory manual, like a FUM for Dummies, that is 1,271 pages long, allegedly. Aside from that, there was some extra details about ranks and their treatments within said ranks. Primos, for instance, are treated as 4th-class citizens, and fed far later than everyone else. Aside from that, we get more on the FUM's day-to-day on the lower end, whether it be ammo delivery or meting out punishments. Above all else though, he enjoys following orders and wants to climb the ladder here. He actually seems genuinely happy. Now, those voice lines, those are fucking fantastic. I implore you to go through and listen to them yourself. But there's one where he just straight up shoots himself for failing a check.
책임을 다하지 못했으니 그에 맞는 벌을.
Otherwise, we get extras regarding rank treatments, duties, and punishments. Most importantly, we get clarification on the East's fighting style. They don't really shoot, so to speak. The aforementioned propellants with Lei Heng, that's just normal in the East. These guys aren't shooting with their guns, period. They're just using fucking propellant in their guns to do their bayonet combat faster. I can't tell if they're insane or not, but bro, aren't you paying extra for some jet fuel at that point? Like, surely there are better ways to propel your strikes faster. Yeah, I don't know, man. This particular realization was probably the worst one. Just use spears at that point. Why even pay extra for the bullets, are you? God, I have choice words for this one, but anyhow, moving along. From East Capo Free Merceau. The Uptai story is not that amazing. It is a rehash on Lei Heng's exploits during Canto 8, alongside a brief insight to the contracting of Lei Heng into this whole mess to begin with. Aside from that, Merceau goes from being very French to instead very Italian. But unfortunately, there just isn't much else to say about this guy that isn't covered better with the original instead. The voice lines don't offer too much more, just the price of those Tiger Mark rounds. A single one is like free premium cigars. Essentially, that's anywhere between several hundred and several thousand per. He claims to spam these out and not care so long as the fight was indeed a good fight. Anyhow, final thoughts on the thumb. They're the Sicilian Mafia taken to the extreme. Family, loyalty, and rank color their creed, and it shows. They've got one of the coolest aesthetics among the syndicates of the backstreets, and are the most no-nonsense of the fingers to boots. I like them a lot thanks to that, and oh, for those that are unaware, my favorite color is actually red. These folks sit cleanly within my preference. For the most part, they're a practical bunch, and simple enough to follow. Myself being a slave to protocol in the past would have been fantastic among their ranks. I used to remember all 200 plus procedures for errors and mistakes at the casino I used to work at. Some supervisors were scared of me being able to recite them, and some of the bosses had to change up the protocols because I pointed out some glaring loopholes and definitions at one point. Real funny the lasting impact I had there. Anyway, join the fun if you want to be a part of the classic mob. Besides, with how legal crime is in the backstreets, you may as well join one of the stronger bunches. Thanks for listening in to another one of my lore spiels. With all the fingers sorted, I may just collate them together with some extra cuts and corrections. New House of Spiders fellas and whatnot being shoved in to clear for details. We'll see if I get to that definitive edition someday. Anyhow, if you enjoyed the video, like below, and if you'd like more lore dives like this one in the future, subscribe to the channel. As for supporting further, you can be like these two, Artie and Derp, my patrons. Or otherwise like Ane and Iwa over there, my YouTube members. In regards to other announcements, I'll be running a book club in a few hours for APR, going over The Stranger, a few choice words for the book, and more. Again though, thanks for listening in and using me as second monitor content. Appreciate it.